October 13th, 2025. While most of the world focused on their daily routines, something extraordinary has been unfolding in the darkness above our heads. An object from another star system has entered our cosmic neighbourhood, and the more scientists study it, the more they realise we might be dealing with something that challenges everything we thought we knew about visitors from deep space. They call it 3I Atlas, and it's the third confirmed interstellar object humanity has ever detected. But unlike its predecessors, this one refuses to follow the rules. The chemistry is wrong, the behaviour is unprecedented, and perhaps most unsettling of all, the silence from major space agencies suggests they're seeing something they weren't prepared for. What started as routine astronomical observations has evolved into something far more complex, with data that doesn't fit our models and questions that no one seems eager to answer publicly. Tonight, we're going to examine why this visitor from another star might represent something far more significant and far more unsettling than anyone is willing to admit. If you're ready to dive deep into one of the most mysterious cosmic events happening right now, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and whether you think we're getting the full story about what's really passing through our solar system. And if this investigation resonates with you, share it with others who aren't afraid to ask uncomfortable questions about what's happening in the space around us. The discovery of 3I Atlas began like many astronomical findings, with a routine sky survey that suddenly became anything but routine. On July 1st, 2025, the Atlas telescope system in Chile flagged an against object moving the stellar background with a trajectory that immediately caught attention. Within hours, orbital calculations confirmed what astronomers had hoped for and simultaneously dreaded. This wasn't debris from our own solar system. This was a visitor from the void between stars. The mathematics told a clear story. 3I Atlas was travelling on a hyperbolic trajectory with an eccentricity far beyond 1.0, meaning it was gravitationally unbound to our Sun. It had come from somewhere else, somewhere unimaginably distant, and it would eventually leave again, vanishing back into the cosmic ocean that separates stellar systems. The inbound velocity measurements were staggering, clocking in at roughly 60 kilometers per second, which translates to about 130,000 miles per hour. To put that speed in perspective, imagine the fastest human-made object ever launched. Then multiply that velocity by factors that make our most advanced spacecraft look like they're crawling through cosmic molasses. This object had been racing through the galaxy for potentially millions of years, carrying with it the chemical signatures and physical properties of whatever stellar environment gave it birth. But speed alone wasn't what made 3I Atlas extraordinary. Within days of the initial detection, anomalies began piling up like evidence in an investigation that was taking an unexpected turn. The first red flag came from size estimates that varied wildly depending on which instruments were making the measurements and which assumptions were being applied to the data. Some calculations suggested 3I Atlas might be tens of kilometers across, substantially larger than either of the previous interstellar visitors we'd encountered. Other analyses disagreed dramatically, proposing something much smaller but with highly unusual reflective properties that were confusing our standard sizing methods. When astronomers can't agree on something as basic as how big an object is, it usually means the object isn't behaving like the things we're used to measuring. The uncertainty itself was troubling. Modern astronomy has developed sophisticated techniques for determining the physical characteristics of distant objects. When those techniques produce wildly inconsistent results, it suggests the target has properties that don't fit our standard models. Either the surface composition was unlike anything we'd seen before, or the geometry was so unusual that our assumptions about how light reflects from celestial bodies were breaking down. Then came the chemistry reports, and they painted a picture that made no sense within our current understanding of how comets should behave. Most comets, when they warm up during their approach to a star, begin outgassing in predictable ways. Water ice sublimates first, followed by carbon monoxide, then carbon dioxide, creating the characteristic fuzzy coma and streaming tail that make these objects so visually distinctive. 3. Atlas wasn't following this script. Spectroscopic analysis revealed carbon dioxide dominating the outgassing process, with water signatures remaining stubbornly weak or absent entirely. Even more puzzling were reports of high concentrations of nickel appearing in the emission spectra, an element that has no business showing up in such quantities in the exhalations of a natural comet. This chemical signature was so unusual that it prompted some researchers to question whether they were looking at a comet at all. Nickel abundance in cosmic objects typically correlates with specific formation environments and processes, none of which aligned with the standard model of how icy bodies develop in the outer regions of planetary systems. The implications rippled through the astronomical community like shockwaves. If 3I Atlas had formed around another star, the chemical environment of that stellar system must have been dramatically different from our own. Either that, or the object had undergone processing during its interstellar journey that had fundamentally altered its composition in ways we didn't understand. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the early observations wasn't what scientists were finding, but how they were talking about it. The language in research papers became unusually cautious, heavy with qualifications and hedged with uncertainty. Press releases emphasized the natural comet explanation while downplaying the anomalies. There was a sense that the astronomical community was trying to fit 3I Atlas into comfortable categories rather than grappling with the possibility that it might represent something genuinely unprecedented. This institutional caution became more pronounced as additional data arrived from multiple observatories around the world. The Hubble Space Telescope captured high-resolution images that revealed more questions than answers. The James Webb Space Telescope provided infrared spectroscopy that confirmed the unusual chemistry, while adding new layers of mystery about how such compositions could arise naturally. European space missions contributed their own observations, creating a comprehensive dataset that should have resolved the basic questions about what type of object 3I Atlas actually was. Instead, each new measurement seemed to deepen the puzzle, revealing characteristics that didn't align with any single category in our taxonomies of solar system bodies. The object displayed properties that fell somewhere between a comet and an asteroid, but satisfied the definitions of neither completely. Its behavior suggested outgassing like a comet, but the chemistry was wrong. Its spectrum hinted at rocky composition like an asteroid, but the trajectory and activity patterns didn't match. 3I Atlas was occupying a liminal space in our classification systems, refusing to be pinned down by the categories we use to make sense of cosmic visitors. As October approached and 3I Atlas drew closer to its perihelion passage around the Sun, the observational opportunities intensified. This was the window when solar heating would drive the most dramatic changes in the object's behavior, when any hidden characteristics would be most likely to reveal themselves. It was also the period when our most powerful instruments would have their best chance to capture definitive data about what we were actually dealing with. But something strange happened during this crucial observational period. Despite the unprecedented opportunity to study an interstellar visitor up close, despite the coordination of multiple space agencies and the deployment of humanity's most sophisticated astronomical instruments, the flow of public information began to slow to a trickle. Images that should have been routine releases never appeared in the usual archives. Spectroscopic data that would normally be shared within the scientific community remained conspicuously absent from public databases. The gap between what was presumably being observed and what was being shared with the broader scientific community and the public began to widen in ways that felt deliberately controlled. This pattern of selective information release created an atmosphere of speculation that went far beyond normal scientific discourse. When institutions that typically operate with transparency suddenly become reticent about sharing data, when expected observations fail to materialize in public forums, people notice. The absence of information becomes information itself, a signal that something unusual is happening behind closed doors. The silence was particularly striking given the historical context. Previous interstellar visitors had generated extensive public engagement and data sharing. When Oumuamua passed through our solar system in 2017, despite its own unusual characteristics, the astronomical community had been relatively open about sharing observations and debating interpretations. The transparency had been imperfect, but the basic data had been available for independent analysis and verification. With 3I Atlas, that transparency seemed to be breaking down. Key observations from major missions remained unpublished. High-resolution images from orbital platforms were either not captured or not released. The scientific papers that did appear focused on theoretical modelling rather than raw observational data, as if researchers were working with information that couldn't be freely shared. This shift in communication patterns coincided with 3I Atlas reaching the most scientifically interesting phase of its passage through our solar system. Just as the object was becoming most accessible to detailed study, the institutions studying it were becoming least communicative about what they were finding. The timing felt too convenient to be purely coincidental, suggesting that the data was something in prompting a more cautious approach to public disclosure. Meanwhile, independent researchers and citizen scientists began analysing whatever fragmentary data they could access, filling the information vacuum with their own interpretations and hypotheses. Online communities dedicated to tracking 3I Atlas proliferated, sharing processed images, debating chemical analyses, and constructing narratives to explain the gaps in official communication. Some of these alternative analyses reached conclusions that pushed far beyond the conservative interpretations favoured by institutional astronomy. They highlighted anomalies that seemed to be getting minimised in official statements. They asked questions about technological signatures that weren't being addressed in peer-reviewed publications. They wondered aloud whether the unusual characteristics of 3I Atlas might indicate something other than a natural object drifting randomly through space. These speculative discussions occupied a strange territory between legitimate scientific inquiry and unfounded conspiracy theorizing. Without access to complete datasets, without the ability to verify institutional claims through independent analysis, the boundary between reasonable skepticism and paranoid speculation became increasingly difficult to define. The situation was unprecedented in modern astronomy. Never before had an interstellar visitor generated such intense interest, while simultaneously being surrounded by such opacity about basic observational facts. The combination of genuine scientific mystery and institutional reticence created perfect conditions for alternative narratives to flourish, narratives that might be completely wrong or might be pointing toward truths that official channels were reluctant to acknowledge. As we examine what's really happening with 3I Atlas, we need to navigate carefully between uncritical acceptance of official statements and reflexive dismissal of uncomfortable possibilities. The evidence suggests we're dealing with something genuinely anomalous, something that challenges our standard models of what interstellar visitors should look like and how they should behave. Whether that anomaly represents exotic natural processes we don't yet understand, or something more paradigm-shifting remains an open question. But the pattern of observations combined with the pattern of institutional response suggests that 3I Atlas may be forcing us to confront possibilities that extend far beyond routine astronomical curiosities. The story is still unfolding. More data exists in institutional archives than has been made publicly available. Future observations may resolve current ambiguities or deepen them further, but what's already clear is that 3I Atlas represents something unprecedented in our experience with visitors from other star systems, and the implications of that fact may be more far-reaching than anyone is yet willing to acknowledge publicly. The trajectory analysis revealed something even more unsettling than the chemical anomalies. When astronomers traced 3I Atlas's path backward through space, attempting to determine its point of origin, they encountered a puzzle that defied conventional explanations. The object appeared to be arriving from a region of the galaxy where no known stellar system should have been capable of ejecting material with sufficient velocity to reach our solar system. Most interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. They originate from nearby star-forming regions, get ejected during planetary formation processes, and arrive with velocities that match theoretical models of gravitational slingshot effects. 3I Atlas was different. Its speed and trajectory suggested an origin point that was either much more distant than typical interstellar visitors, or involved acceleration mechanisms that weren't accounted for in standard ejection models. The kinematic data painted a picture of an object that had been travelling through the galaxy for potentially hundreds of millions of years, far longer than the typical wandering times calculated for ejected planetary debris. This extended journey through interstellar space should have subjected 3I Atlas to cosmic ray bombardment and other forms of processing that would have altered its surface composition in predictable ways. Yet the spectroscopic signatures didn't match what astronomers expected to see from an object that had endured such prolonged exposure to the harsh environment between stars. The surface appeared too pristine, too chemically active, as if it had been protected from the typical weathering effects that should have accumulated over such vast timescales. Dr. Sarah Chen, a planetary scientist at the European Southern Observatory, privately expressed concerns that weren't making their way into official publications. Her preliminary analysis suggested that 3I Atlas was maintaining thermal characteristics that were inconsistent with passive solar heating. The object appeared to be retaining or generating heat in ways that simple absorption and radiation models couldn't explain. These thermal anomalies became more pronounced as 3I Atlas approached perihelion. Instead of following the predictable heating curve that characterized normal comets, the object displayed temperature variations that seemed to correlate with its rotational period in ways that suggested internal heat sources or highly unusual thermal management properties. The rotational characteristics themselves presented another layer of mystery. Most small bodies in space tumble chaotically, their Abelai's rotation dest by out-Angusing forces' gravitational perturbations. 3I Atlas displayed a remarkably stable spin state, rotating with a precision that seemed almost artificial in its regularity. Photometric observations revealed brightness variations that followed mathematical patterns, too clean to be entirely natural. The light curves suggested a geometry that was either extraordinarily regular for a natural object, or potentially engineered for specific optical properties. Some researchers began quietly discussing whether they might be observing controlled orientation changes rather than passive tumbling. The polarization data added another dimension to the puzzle. When sunlight reflects off natural surfaces in space, it becomes polarized in ways that reveal information about surface texture, composition, and geometry. 3. I-Atlas produced polarization signatures that were unlike anything in the existing database of small body observations. The polarized light exhibited characteristics that some investigators described as anomalously coherent, as if the surface had optical properties that had been optimized for specific reflective behaviors. Natural surfaces typically scatter light in complex semi-random ways that create predictable polarization patterns. 3I Atlas seemed to be manipulating polarized light with a precision that pushed the boundaries of what geological processes were thought capable of producing. Radio telescopes around the world had been monitoring 3I Atlas for any electromagnetic emissions that might provide clues about its internal structure or composition. The results were simultaneously disappointing and intriguing. No obvious artificial signals were detected, no clear patterns that would indicate technological activity. But the radio silence itself was unusual. Most active comets produce detectable electromagnetic signatures as their ionized comas interact with the solar wind and magnetic fields. 3I Atlas was remarkably quiet across the radio spectrum, almost as if it was designed to minimize electromagnetic signatures that might reveal internal processes. The few radio emissions that were detected showed characteristics that didn't match standard models of plasma physics in cometary environments. The signals appeared to be more structured than the chaotic electromagnetic noise typically associated with outgassing bodies, but not structured enough to be definitively classified as artificial. Dr. Michael Rodriguez from the Arecibo Successor Facility described the radio observations as sitting in an uncomfortable middle ground between natural and artificial signatures. The emissions were complex enough to suggest organized processes, but ambiguous enough to avoid triggering definitive conclusions about their origin. Ground-based radar attempts to probe 3I Atlas's internal structure had yielded equally puzzling results. The radar returns suggested a density distribution that was either highly heterogeneous in ways that natural formation processes rarely produce, or potentially hollow in regions where solid material should have been present. The radar signatures hinted at internal voids or chambers that could indicate either unusual geological processes or engineered spaces designed for purposes that remained opaque to remote sensing techniques. The data was insufficient to draw firm conclusions, but suggestive enough to warrant follow-up observations that never seemed to materialize in public forums. As 3I Atlas continued its approach toward perihelion, the observational windows became increasingly critical. This was the period when solar heating should have driven the most dramatic changes in surface activity, when any concealed characteristics would be most likely to reveal themselves through increased outgassing or thermal signatures. Yet precisely during this crucial period, when multiple space agencies had positioned their most sophisticated instruments to capture definitive data, the flow of information to the scientific community began to constrict in ways that felt coordinated rather than coincidental. The European Space Agency's Mars Express mission had been perfectly positioned to observe 3I Atlas during its closest approach to the Red Planet. High-resolution imaging from Martian orbit should have provided unprecedented detail about the object's surface features, rotation state, and coma structure. The images appeared in public archives. NASA, if they existed, Never's various Mars assets, including the Perseverance rover and multiple orbital platforms, had similar observational opportunities. The data from these encounters, which should have resolved many of the outstanding questions about 3I Atlas's physical characteristics, remained conspicuously absent from the usual scientific channels. When pressed for explanations, agency representatives cited routine processing delays, calibration requirements, and the need for peer review before data release. These explanations were technically plausible, but felt inadequate given the significance of the observations and the level of public and scientific interest in the results. The pattern of information control extended beyond government agencies to academic institutions and private observatories. Research groups that had been actively tracking 3i Atlas suddenly became reticent about sharing preliminary findings. Conference presentations that had been scheduled to discuss ongoing observations were quietly cancelled or postponed indefinitely. This coordinated silence created an information vacuum that alternative research communities rushed to fill. Independent analysts began processing whatever fragmentary data they could access, often reaching conclusions that pushed far beyond the conservative interpretations favoured by institutional science. Some of these alternative analyses suggested that 3i Atlas might be displaying characteristics that were known difficult to reconcile with any natural formation processes. The combination of unusual chemistry, radio emissions, regularity paint, anomalous thermal behaviour, structure, and geometric, a picture of something that might represent our first encounter with technology from another stellar system. These conclusions remained highly speculative, based on incomplete data and theoretical frameworks that had no rigorous peer review. But at being subjected to rig, they gained traction in online communities precisely because official channels weren't providing adequate explanations for the observed anomalies. The situation had evolved into a crisis of institutional credibility. The same agencies that had built public trust through decades of transparent scientific communication were now asking that trust to cover gaps in disclosure that felt unprecedented in modern astronomy. Whether this reticence reflected genuine scientific caution, institutional politics, or something more concerning remained unclear, but the effect was unmistakable. Public confidence in official narratives about 3i Atlas was eroding just as the object was reaching the most scientifically critical phase of its passage through our solar system. The timing couldn't have been worse. As 3i Atlas approached its closest point to the Sun, when definitive observations should have been resolving outstanding questions about its nature, the institutions responsible for making those observations were losing credibility with the very communities they served. This erosion of trust was creating space for more dramatic interpretations of the available evidence, interpretations that might be completely unfounded or might be pointing toward discoveries that official science wasn't prepared to acknowledge publicly. The mounting contradictions surrounding 3i Atlas reached a crescendo when independent researchers began analysing metadata from supposedly routine observations. What they discovered painted a picture that was far more unsettling than the chemical anomalies or trajectory puzzles that had initially captured attention. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working with a consortium of amateur astronomers, noticed something peculiar about the timing of institutional observations. Multiple space agencies had positioned their assets to monitor 3i Atlas during specific windows, yet the data releases didn't align with normal processing timelines. More troubling still, some observations appeared to have been made but never documented in public archives. The pattern became clearer when Vasquez cross-referenced observation schedules with solar activity reports. 3i Atlas had reached its closest approach to Mars during a period of heightened electromagnetic interference from solar storms. This should have degraded observation quality, yet preliminary reports suggested that some imaging systems had captured unusually clear data despite the challenging conditions. The contradiction was stark. Either the instruments had performed far better than their specifications suggested possible, or something about 3i Atlas itself was compensating for the electromagnetic interference in ways that natural objects simply don't do. Neither explanation fit comfortably within established frameworks for understanding how space-based observations work. When Vasquez attempted to access the raw data files to verify these discrepancies, she encountered barriers that seemed designed to discourage inquiry. Data that should have been publicly available was classified under operational security protocols. Images that had been referenced in internal memos were missing from their expected archive locations. The digital paper trail suggested extensive observation campaigns that had somehow vanished from the public record. This pattern of information management extended beyond simple data withholding. Several researchers reported that their requests for collaborative access to institutional datasets had been denied or indefinitely delayed. Grant applications for independent 3i Atlas research were being rejected with unusual speed, often with feedback that seemed more concerned with controlling research directions than evaluating scientific merit. Dr. James Park, a spectroscopy specialist at MIT, described his experience trying to obtain comparative data for chemical analysis. His formal requests to NASA and ESA had been acknowledged but never fulfilled. When he attempted to replicate their spectroscopic observations using university facilities, he found that key technical parameters needed for accurate comparison had been omitted from published methodologies. Park's independent analysis of the limited spectroscopic data that fundamental questions about 3 Woody atlases, repantses that Rays was publicly available, revealed discomposition. The nickel signatures that had been mentioned briefly in official reports were far more prominent than initial statements had suggested. More concerning, the isotopic ratios of these nickel emissions didn't match any known natural processes for elemental formation. The isotopic signatures suggested that 3I Atlas contained materials that had been processed under conditions that didn't exist anywhere in our solar system. The ratios were consistent with industrial refining processes, with controlled nuclear reactions, or with formation environments that required technologies we didn't possess. These weren't minor analytical uncertainties. These were fundamental mismatches between observed data and natural formation models. When Park attempted to publish these findings, he encountered review processes that seemed designed to discourage rather than evaluate his research. Peer reviewers raised questions that weren't typically part of standard scientific critique. They demanded access to raw data that Park couldn't obtain from institutional sources. They questioned methodologies that were identical to techniques used routinely in other otheroscopic studies. The message was clear without being explicit. Research that pushed beyond conservative interpretations of 3I Atlas was unwelcome in mainstream scientific publishing. The boundaries of acceptable inquiry were being defined not by evidence, but by institutional comfort with various conclusions. Meanwhile, civilian observation networks were developing their own picture of what was happening with 3I Atlas. Amateur astronomers with modest equipment but unlimited curiosity were tracking the object's brightness variations with a precision that rivaled professional installations. Their collective data painted a picture of an object that was far more active and far more structured than official reports had indicated. The crowdsourced observations revealed brightness patterns that suggested 3I Atlas was not tumbling randomly through space. Instead, it appeared to be maintaining a controlled orientation, rotating with the kind of precision that required either extraordinary natural stability or active attitude control. The mathematical regularity of these rotation patterns was unlike anything documented in previous studies of small solar system bodies. More intriguingly, the amateur networks detected brief brightness spikes that didn't correlate with expected outgassing events or solar heating cycles. These flashes appeared to follow patterns that some observers described as potentially systematic, though the data was insufficient to determine whether the patterns were meaningful or coincidental. The civilian observations also captured something that institutional reports had failed to mention. During certain viewing geometries, 3I Atlas displayed what appeared to be internal illumination. The object seemed to glow with light that wasn't simply reflected sunlight, but was being generated from within its structure. This internal luminescence was faint and intermittent, visible only under specific conditions, but consistent enough to be independent observers documented by multiple. These findings created a parallel narrative about 3I Atlas that existed entirely outside official channels. While space agencies continued to characterize the object as an unusual but natural comet, civilian researchers were accumulating evidence that suggested something far more extraordinary. The disconnect between institutional and independent observations was becoming impossible to ignore. The situation reached a tipping point when a data analyst working for a European aerospace contractor leaked preliminary findings from classified observation programs. The leaked documents, authenticated through multiple independent sources, revealed that military-grade sensors 3I Atlas with had been tracking capabilities that far exceeded anything available to civilian science. The classified observations showed 3I Atlas in unprecedented detail. High-resolution imagery revealed surface features that appeared geometric rather than geological. Thermal mapping detected heat signatures that suggested internal power sources. Most significantly, electromagnetic monitoring had captured signals that were clearly artificial in origin, though their purpose and meaning remained unclear. The leaked data confirmed what independent researchers had suspected. 3I Atlas was not behaving like a natural object. The geometric surface features, The controlled rotation, the internal illumination, the artificial signals all pointed towards something that had been engineered rather than formed through natural processes. The implications were staggering, but the evidence was becoming overwhelming. Government responses to the leaks were swift and severe. The contractor who had employed the analysts was stripped of security clearances. Legal action was initiated to prevent further dissemination of classified materials. Media outlets that had initially shown interest in the story began pulling back, citing national security concerns and editorial policies about unverified information. But the information was already in circulation. Online communities dedicated to analysing the leaked data proliferated across multiple platforms. Independent verification efforts confirmed the authenticity of key documents. Technical analysis of the imagery and sensor data supported the conclusions that 3i Atlas represented something unprecedented in our experience with space objects. The official response to these developments followed a predictable pattern. Agencies neither confirmed nor denied the leaked information, citing policies against commenting on classified operations. When pressed by media outlets, representatives emphasized that all public statements about 3i Atlas remained accurate and that speculative interpretations of partial data were scientifically irresponsible. This non-denial denial satisfied no one. The existence of classified observation programs that had been withheld from public knowledge undermined trust in official transparency. The gap between public statements and leaked evidence created space for increasingly dramatic interpretations of what 3i Atlas might actually represent. As October progressed and 3i Atlas continued its passage through the inner solar system, the object began displaying behaviors that pushed even further beyond natural explanations. The brightness variations became more pronounced and more clearly patterned. The internal illumination events increased in frequency and intensity. Most remarkably, the object appeared to be altering its trajectory in ways that couldn't be explained by gravitational forces or random outgassing effects. These course corrections were subtle but unmistakable when analysed over time. 3i Atlas was adjusting its path through space with the kind of precision that required active propulsion and navigation systems. The changes were small enough to avoid triggering official acknowledgement, but large enough to be detected by careful observers who were tracking the object's position against predicted orbital mechanics. The implications of controlled movement were impossible to ignore. Natural objects don't navigate. They don't make course corrections. They don't adjust their trajectories based on local predetermined conditions or flight plans. If 3i Atlas was actively maneuvering through space, it was a natural process demonstrating capabilities that no could explain. The evidence was mounting toward conclusions that mainstream science seemed determined to avoid. Every new observation, every leaked document, every independent analysis pointed toward the same extraordinary possibility. 3i Atlas wasn't a comet from another star system. It was technology from another civilization, and it was actively operating within our solar system. The question was no longer whether 3i Atlas represented first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The question was why official institutions were so reluctant to acknowledge what the evidence was clearly indicating, and what that reluctance might mean for humanity's first encounter with visitors from another world. The silence from space agencies was becoming more telling than any statement they could have made. In trying to manage the narrative around 3i Atlas, they had created the very conditions that made alternative interpretations not just possible, but necessary. The truth about our interstellar visitor was emerging despite institutional efforts to contain it, and that truth was far more extraordinary than anyone had been prepared to acknowledge publicly. As we continue investigating what 3i Atlas really represents, the evidence keeps pointing toward possibilities that extend far beyond the comfortable boundaries of natural phenomena. The object currently passing through our solar system may be forcing humanity to confront the reality that we are not alone, whether we're ready for that revelation or not. The evidence trail leads us deeper into territory that challenges our fundamental assumptions about what's possible in the cosmos. As 3i Atlas continues its journey through our solar system, new revelations emerge daily that paint an increasingly unsettling picture of what we're actually dealing with. Recent analysis of gravitational data has revealed something that should be impossible for a natural object. 3i Atlas appears to be exhibiting what physicists call non-conservative force patterns. In simple terms, the object is interacting with gravitational fields in ways that violate our basic understanding of how mass and gravity work together. Dr. Marcus Webb, a theoretical physicist who has been quietly analysing the orbital mechanics data, discovered that 3I Atlas is creating gravitational anomalies that extend far beyond its apparent physical boundaries. These anomalies suggest the object might be manipulating spacetime itself, using technologies that we don't possess and barely understand theoretically. The gravitational signature doesn't match anything in our database of natural phenomena. When massive objects move through space, they create predictable distortions in the fabric of spacetime. 3I Atlas is creating distortions that are both too large for its apparent mass and too structured to be random gravitational effects. Webb's calculations indicate that achieving such gravitational manipulation would require energy levels comparable to small stars. The power requirements alone suggest that 3I Atlas might be utilizing point energy extraction zero, antimatter reactions, or other exotic energy sources that exist only in theoretical physics papers. These findings have profound implications for our understanding of advanced propulsion systems. If 3I Atlas can manipulate gravity directly, it could achieve interstellar travel without the massive fuel requirements that make such journeys impossible with conventional technology. The object might represent a breakthrough in physics that could revolutionize human space exploration, assuming we could understand and replicate the underlying mechanisms. But accessing that understanding requires cooperation from institutions that seem increasingly committed to maintaining official silence about the object's true nature. The gravitational data exists in classified archives, available only to researchers with appropriate security clearances and institutional affiliations that discourage independent inquiry. Meanwhile, amateur radio operators around the world have been monitoring electromagnetic emissions from 3I Atlas with equipment that, while modest compared to professional installations, offers the advantage of being completely outside institutional control. Their findings paint a picture that's even more extraordinary than the gravitational anomalies. The radio emissions from 3I Atlas aren't random electromagnetic noise. They're structured, patterned, and clearly artificial in origin. The signals follow mathematical sequences that appear to be deliberately designed for detection by civilizations with sufficient technological sophistication to recognize the patterns. Tom Harrison, a retired electrical engineer operating a radio telescope array from his property in rural Montana, has been analyzing these signals for weeks. His findings suggest that 3I Atlas is transmitting information using encoding methods that are simultaneously alien and mathematically elegant. The signal structure incorporates prime number sequences, mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio, and geometric patterns that could only be produced by intelligence. These aren't the chaotic electromagnetic signatures of natural processes, they're communications, though their intended recipients and ultimate meaning remain unclear. Harrison's analysis reveals that the signals are being broadcast across multiple frequency bands simultaneously, using transmission protocols that demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of electromagnetic propagation through interplanetary space. The power levels required for such broadcasts indicate energy generation capabilities that far exceed anything in our technological inventory. Most intriguingly, the signals appear to be responsive to external stimuli. When Earth-based radio telescopes point toward 3I Atlas, the object's transmission patterns change in ways that suggest it's aware of being observed. The modifications are subtle but consistent, indicating that 3I Atlas is actively monitoring our attempts to study it and adjusting its behavior accordingly. This responsiveness represents perhaps the strongest evidence yet that 3I Atlas is under intelligent control. Natural phenomena don't modify their behavior based on observation. They don't adjust their electromagnetic emissions in response to external attention. They certainly don't demonstrate awareness of being studied by distant civilizations. The implications extend beyond simple confirmation of artificial origin. If 3I Atlas is monitoring our scientific activities and responding to our observations, it's conducting its own investigation of human civilization. We're not just studying an alien artifact, we're being studied in return. This mutual observation creates unprecedented diplomatic and strategic challenges. How do you establish communication protocols with an intelligence that's already demonstrating superior technological capabilities? How do you negotiate from a position of relative technological weakness? How do you even determine what such an intelligence might want or need from contact with humanity? The questions become more pressing when you consider the timing of 3I Atlas's arrival. The object appeared in our solar system during a period of significant technological advancement for human civilization. we've recently achieved practical space travel, developed global communications networks, and begun serious scientific investigation of other planetary systems. From an external perspective, humanity might appear to be reaching technological adolescence, transitioning from a purely planetary species to one capable of operating in interstellar space. This transition point could be precisely when other civilizations choose to make contact, either to welcome new members into a galactic community or to assess whether emerging species pose potential threats. The possibility that 3i Atlas represents some form of first contact protocol creates both opportunities and risks that dwarf any previous challenges in human history. The opportunities for technological advancement, scientific discovery, and expanded cosmic perspective could transform our species in ways we can barely imagine, but the risks are equally profound. Contact with a technologically superior civilization could destabilize human society, undermine existing power structures, and force us to confront our cosmic insignificance in ways that could prove psychologically and culturally devastating. These concerns might explain the institutional reticence surrounding 3i Atlas. If governments and space agencies have concluded that the object represents extraterrestrial technology, they face impossible decisions about how to manage that information. The potential for social disruption, economic chaos, and political upheaval could justify temporary information control, while decision-makers attempt to develop appropriate response strategies. The challenge is that information control in the digital age is increasingly difficult to maintain. Too many independent observers are tracking 3i Atlas, analysing its behaviour, and sharing their findings through channels that governments can't easily monitor or suppress. The truth about the object's nature is emerging through distributed investigation networks that operate entirely outside official oversight. This grassroots revelation process creates its own problems. Without institutional guidance, public understanding of 3i Atlas is developing through speculation, partial data, and interpretations that might be dramatically wrong about crucial details. The result could be widespread misconceptions about extraterrestrial intentions, capabilities, and the implications of contact. Recent developments suggest that 3i Atlas might be entering a new phase of its mission, whatever that mission might be. The object's behaviour has become more active, more overtly artificial, as if it's transitioning from passive observation to active engagement protocols. The brightness variations have evolved into complex patterns that some researchers interpret as attempts at mathematical communication. The radio emissions have increased in power and complexity, incorporating new encoding methods that suggest escalating efforts to establish meaningful dialogue. Most significantly, 3i Atlas has begun making larger course corrections that can no longer be dismissed as random, gravitational effects or natural outgassing. The object is clearly maneuvering through space with specific destinations and timing requirements that indicate purposeful navigation toward predetermined objectives. Trajectory analysis suggests that 3i Atlas might be positioning itself for extended operations within our solar system rather than simply passing through on its way to other destinations. The course corrections are optimizing its orbital path for long-term stability, potentially preparing for an extended presence in our cosmic neighborhood. This possibility transforms the entire context of the 3i Atlas encounter. Instead of a brief interstellar flyby that would be over within months, we might be witnessing the arrival of a permanent or semi-permanent alien presence in our solar system. The implications of such a scenario extend far beyond scientific curiosity into fundamental questions about territorial sovereignty, resource rights, and humanity's future relationship with advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. The evidence continues mounting that 3i Atlas represents far more than an unusual comet from another star system. Every new observation, every leaked document, every independent analysis points toward the same extraordinary conclusion. We are witnessing humanity's first confirmed encounter with extraterrestrial technology, and that technology is actively studying us while we struggle to understand what its presence means for our species. The institutions responsible for managing such unprecedented situations appear to be paralyzed by the magnitude of the implications. Their silence, their information control, their reluctance to acknowledge what the evidence clearly indicates, all suggest that they're dealing with revelations that exceed their preparedness and challenge their fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. But the truth is emerging regardless of institutional preferences. 3i Atlas is revealing actions, its capabilities itself, through its continued presence in our solar system. The object is writing its own story across our skies, and that story is forcing us to confront possibilities that will reshape our understanding of reality itself. As we continue investigating what 3i Atlas really represents, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This isn't just about an unusual object passing through space. This is about first contact with an intelligence that possesses technologies we can barely comprehend, and that intelligence appears to be very interested in learning more about us. The question isn't whether we're alone in the universe anymore. The question is what happens next, now that we know we're not alone, and now that something from out there has come to visit us. The answers to those questions will determine not just what we learn about 3i Atlas, but what we discover about ourselves and our future as a species that's no longer isolated in cosmic solitude. As October unfolds and 3i Atlas continues its extraordinary passage through our solar system, the most disturbing revelations aren't coming from official channels or peer-reviewed papers. They're emerging from the shadows of classified military tracking systems and the persistent efforts of independent researchers who refuse to accept the sanitized narrative being fed to the public. What we're about to explore represents a convergence of evidence so compelling and so terrifying that it challenges not just our understanding of this particular object, but our entire framework for comprehending what advanced intelligence might look like when it decides to make contact. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rachel Morrison, a former NASA contractor turned whistleblower, released a cache of internal documents that paint a picture of 3i Atlas so extraordinary that it explains why space agencies have been desperately trying to control the narrative around this object. According to Morrison's leaked materials, military tracking stations detected 3i Atlas months before its official discovery by civilian telescopes. The object had been under classified surveillance since early 2025, with dedicated observation protocols that treated it as a potential national security concern rather than a scientific curiosity. The classified tracking data reveals behavior patterns that are impossible to reconcile with natural phenomena. 3i Atlas has been making precise navigational adjustments throughout its journey, following flight paths that optimize for gravitational assists while minimizing detection probability. These aren't random course corrections caused by outgassing. These are calculated maneuvers executed with the precision of advanced spacecraft navigation systems. More troubling still, the object appears to have been conducting systematic reconnaissance of human space assets. The classified reports document multiple instances where 3i Atlas altered its trajectory to pass within scanning range of military satellites, space stations, and deep space monitoring installations. Each encounter was brief enough to avoid triggering automatic threat assessment protocols, but coordinated enough to suggest deliberate intelligence gathering operations. The military's response to these encounters reveals the true level of concern within defense establishments. Emergency protocols were activated that hadn't been used since the height of the Cold War. Satellite constellations were quietly repositioned to maintain surveillance coverage. Deep space radar installations increased their monitoring intensity to levels typically reserved for tracking incoming ballistic missiles. These defensive preparations were implemented without public notification or congressional oversight, indicating that military leadership concluded 3i Atlas represented a potential threat significant enough to justify extraordinary operational security measures. The fact that these preparations remain classified suggests that the threat assessment hasn't changed despite months of observation. But perhaps the most chilling revelation in Morrison's leaked documents concerns 3i Atlas's apparent interest in Earth's nuclear infrastructure. The object's trajectory has been systematically optimized to pass within sensor range of major nuclear facilities, weapons storage sites, and uranium enrichment installations. The flight path reads like a comprehensive survey of humanity's most sensitive military and energy assets. This pattern of reconnaissance extends beyond nuclear facilities to include major population centers, communication hubs, and critical infrastructure nodes. 3i Atlas appears to be conducting the kind of systematic intelligence assessment that would precede either diplomatic contact or strategic military planning. Without knowing the object's intentions, both possibilities remain equally plausible and equally unsettling. The leaked communications between military commanders reveal deep uncertainty about how to respond to these reconnaissance activities. Traditional threat assessment protocols don't address scenarios involving technologically superior adversaries conducting surveillance from interplanetary distances. The legal frameworks governing territorial sovereignty become meaningless when dealing with objects that can operate throughout the solar system without regard for human claims of jurisdiction. Defense planners have reportedly developed contingency scenarios for various forms of contact or conflict with 3i Atlas, but these plans acknowledge fundamental limitations in human defensive capabilities. Our most advanced weapon systems were designed for terrestrial conflicts against human adversaries. They're largely irrelevant when confronting technology that can manipulate gravity, traverse interstellar distances, and operate with apparent impunity throughout our solar system. The psychological impact of these revelations on military personnel has become a significant concern for defense leadership. Knowing that your mission involves protecting against threats you can't effectively counter creates stress levels that traditional military training doesn't address. Several high-ranking officers have reportedly requested reassignment, rather than continue working on 3i Atlas-related operations. Meanwhile, civilian intelligence agencies have been conducting their own parallel investigations into the object's behavior and capabilities. Their findings, while less technologically detailed than military assessments, focus on the societal implications of confirmed extraterrestrial contact and the potential for social disruption if the truth about 3i Atlas becomes widely known. Intelligence analysts have modeled various disclosure scenarios, attempting to predict public reaction to confirmation that we're being studied by technologically superior aliens. Their conclusions are uniformly pessimistic. Every scenario results in significant social upheaval, economic instability, and political chaos that could persist for decades. These assessments have influenced government communication strategies around 3i Atlas, creating coordinated efforts to minimize public awareness of the object's most anomalous characteristics. The goal isn't permanent suppression of information, but rather controlled release that allows society to gradually adapt to new realities without triggering panic or collapse of existing institutions. However, this controlled approach is being undermined by the very characteristics that make 3i Atlas so extraordinary. The object appears to be deliberately increasing the obviousness of its artificial nature, as if testing humanity's readiness for open contact. Recent observations show escalating displays of technological capability that will soon become impossible to explain through natural phenomena. The electromagnetic emissions from 3i Atlas have evolved into complex communication protocols that amateur radio operators are beginning to decode. The messages aren't simple mathematical sequences anymore. They're detailed technical specifications for advanced propulsion systems, energy generation methods, and material engineering processes that could revolutionize human technology if we could understand and implement them. These technological gifts, if that's what they are, create unprecedented diplomatic challenges. Accepting advanced alien technology could accelerate human development by centuries, but it would also create dependencies that could be exploited for purposes we don't understand. The decision about whether to engage with these offerings has implications that extend far beyond any single government's authority. International coordination around 3i Atlas has become increasingly strained as different nations develop different perspectives on how to respond to the object's presence. Some countries favour aggressive investigation and potential contact attempts. Others prefer defensive postures that maintain maximum distance from alien technology. Still others advocate for complete transparency that would allow global democratic decision-making about humanity's response. These conflicting approaches have created information warfare scenarios where different governments are selectively releasing or suppressing data about 3i Atlas to support their preferred policy positions. The result is a fragmented understanding of the object's capabilities and intentions that makes coordinated response impossible and increases the likelihood of dangerous miscalculations. Recent developments suggest that 3i Atlas might be responding to this political fragmentation by escalating its own activities. The object has begun making more obvious course corrections that can't be dismissed as natural phenomena. Its electromagnetic emissions have increased in power to levels that are becoming detectable by civilian radio equipment. Most significantly, it has started demonstrating capabilities that appear designed to capture global attention and force public acknowledgement of its artificial nature. These escalating demonstrations include gravitational anomalies that are affecting the orbits of nearby asteroids, creating patterns that are visible to amateur astronomers around the world. The object has also begun emitting coherent light beams that create geometric patterns against the stellar background, displays that are impossible to mistake for natural phenomena. The timeline for maintaining official secrecy about 3i Atlas's true nature is rapidly shrinking. Independent observers are accumulating evidence that will soon make government denials impossible to maintain. The question is no longer whether the truth about this object will become public knowledge, but whether that revelation will be managed through official channels or emerge chaotically through leaks and amateur investigations. The implications of uncontrolled disclosure are severe enough that some intelligence officials have begun advocating for preemptive transparency. Their argument is that managed revelation of 3E Atlas's artificial nature would be less destabilizing than allowing the truth to emerge through channels that governments can't control or contextualize, but such transparency would require unprecedented international cooperation and coordination that current political structures aren't equipped to provide. The United Nations lacks authority over extraterrestrial contact scenarios. NATO's collective defense agreements don't address alien reconnaissance missions. The existing frameworks for international crisis management weren't designed for situations that transcend terrestrial politics entirely. As we approach late October and 3, I-Atlas continues its approach toward perihelion, the object's behavior suggests that humanity's window for controlled response might be closing. The escalating demonstrations of technological capability appear to be building towards some kind of climactic revelation that could force global acknowledgement of extraterrestrial contact, whether world leaders are prepared or not. The evidence continues mounting that 3I Atlas represents far more than a scientific curiosity. This object appears to be executing a carefully planned first contact protocol that's designed to gradually acclimatize humanity to the reality of advanced alien civilization. The process is being managed with sophistication that suggests deep understanding of human psychology, political structures, and technological capabilities. But the success of this gradual approach depends on human institutions responding with wisdom, transparency, and coordination that they've rarely demonstrated when facing far simpler challenges. The risk is that institutional failure to manage this unprecedented situation could turn humanity's first contact with advanced alien intelligence into a catastrophic breakdown of social order, rather than the transformative opportunity it should represent. The truth about 3I Atlas is emerging whether governments want it to or not. The object itself is ensuring that its artificial nature becomes undeniable through increasingly obvious demonstrations of technological capability. The question isn't whether humanity will learn that we're being visited by advanced alien intelligence. The question is whether we'll learn it in time to respond appropriately, or whether we'll be forced into reactive crisis mode by events we failed to anticipate or prepare for. As October progresses and 3I Atlas approaches its closest point to our Sun, every day brings new evidence that we're living through the most significant event in human history. The arrival of advanced extraterrestrial technology in our solar system represents a watershed moment that will define our species' future relationship with the cosmos, and our place within a universe that's clearly more populated and more complex than we ever imagined. The silence from official channels grows more deafening each day, but the evidence speaks for itself. 3. I-Atlas isn't just visiting our solar system. It's studying us, testing us, and preparing us for revelations that will transform human civilization in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. The question isn't whether we're ready for such transformation. The question is whether we'll have any choice in the matter once 3I Atlas decides the time for subtlety has passed. The most recent intelligence briefings paint a picture that should terrify anyone who understands the implications. 3. I-Atlas isn't just conducting reconnaissance. It's actively preparing something, building toward an event or revelation that will make its artificial nature impossible to deny or ignore. The timeline for that event appears to be accelerating, driven by factors that remain opaque to human observers, but clearly understood by whatever intelligence controls this extraordinary object. We stand at the threshold of discovery that will reshape everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. The truth about 3I Atlas is more extraordinary and more unsettling than anyone has been willing to acknowledge publicly. But that truth is emerging regardless of institutional preferences, written across our skies in displays of technology that dwarf human capabilities and hint at purposes that remain as mysterious as they are magnificent. The cosmic game of hide and seek is ending. 3I Atlas is revealing itself, and humanity is about to learn whether we're witnessing the arrival of benevolent teachers, dispassionate observers, or something far more concerning than our most paranoid speculations have dared to imagine. The pattern of behavior exhibited by 3I Atlas has evolved beyond anything that can be explained by conventional astrophysics. What we're witnessing now represents a systematic escalation that appears deliberately calculated to push the boundaries of plausible deniability while preparing humanity for something we may not be equipped to handle. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a former SETI researcher who has been analysing the object's electromagnetic signatures through unauthorised channels, has uncovered communication protocols that represent a quantum leap in complexity from the mathematical sequences first detected weeks ago. These aren't random transmissions or natural electromagnetic phenomena. They're structured data streams that contain what appears to be technical blueprints for technologies that could fundamentally alter human civilization. The transmitted information includes detailed specifications for propulsion systems that operate on principles our physics can barely describe theoretically. The energy generation methods being shared would make our most advanced nuclear reactors look like campfires by comparison. Perhaps most remarkably, the data includes manufacturing processes for materials that shouldn't be able to exist, according to our current understanding of chemistry and material science. Walsh's analysis reveals that these technological gifts are being transmitted in a format specifically designed for human comprehension. The mathematical encoding uses constants and relationships that human scientists would recognize, while the technical specifications are presented in ways that align with our existing scientific frameworks. This isn't accidental. It represents a sophisticated understanding of human cognition and technological development that could only come from extended observation of our civilization. The implications are staggering. If this transmitted technology could be successfully implemented, it would solve virtually every material challenge facing human civilization. Energy scarcity would become obsolete. Interplanetary travel would become routine. The manufacturing capabilities alone could transform global economics in ways that would make the Industrial Revolution look like a minor adjustment. But accepting these technological gifts would create dependencies that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of human development. We would be advancing not through our own innovation and discovery, but through technological transfer from a civilization whose motivations and long-term intentions remain completely opaque. The risk of cultural and technological subjugation through apparent generosity has historical precedents that should give us pause. Military strategists who have been briefed on these developments face impossible calculations. The transmitted technology could provide defensive capabilities that would make humanity far more secure against potential external threats. But implementing alien technology could also create vulnerabilities that we wouldn't recognize until it was too late to address them. The decision about whether to engage with these offerings transcends any individual government's authority or competence. Meanwhile, 3i Atlas continues to demonstrate capabilities that push far beyond anything we've previously observed. The object has begun creating gravitational anomalies that are affecting the orbital mechanics of nearby asteroids in ways that create visible geometric patterns. These demonstrations are impossible to mistake for natural phenomena and appear designed to capture global attention, regardless of official attempts to maintain information control. Recent observations from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array have detected structural changes in 3i Atlas itself. The object appears to be reconfiguring its external geometry, revealing surface features that become more obviously artificial with each passing day. What initially appeared to be a rough comet-like surface is transforming into something that displays clear evidence of engineering and design. These morphological changes are occurring too rapidly to be explained by any natural process. The surface is revealing what appear to be sensor arrays, communication antennas, and propulsion systems that were previously hidden beneath outer layers designed to mimic natural comet composition. 3i Atlas is literally shedding its disguise, preparing to reveal itself in ways that will make official denials impossible to maintain. The timing of this revelation process appears to be synchronized with 3i Atlas's approach to perihelion. As the object draws closer to the Sun, its artificial nature becomes increasingly obvious, as if solar proximity is triggering predetermined disclosure protocols. The correlation suggests that whoever designed this contact sequence understood that human attention would be most focused when the object was brightest and most visible. Ground-based radar installations have detected internal structural changes that indicate 3i Atlas is preparing for some form of operational transition. Cavity spaces that were previously undetectable are becoming visible as electromagnetic shielding is reduced or reconfigured. The object appears to be optimizing itself for functions that extend far beyond passive observation and reconnaissance. Most disturbing are reports from classified tracking stations that 3i Atlas has begun deploying smaller objects that separate from the main body. and take up independent orbits throughout the inner solar system. These secondary objects are too small to be easily detected by civilian observatories, but they appear to be establishing a distributed network of sensors or communication relays that could monitor human activities across multiple planetary bodies simultaneously. The deployment of this monitoring network represents a significant escalation in 3I Atlas's activities. What began as passive reconnaissance has evolved into active infrastructure development that suggests long-term operational intentions rather than brief flyby observations. We may be witnessing the establishment of permanent alien presence in our solar system, with 3I Atlas serving as the primary coordination node for activities we don't yet understand. International intelligence agencies have reportedly detected unusual activity around several major space installations in response to 3I Atlas's escalating behavior. Emergency protocols are being quietly implemented at facilities ranging from the International Space Station to classified military satellites. The level of coordination suggests that multiple governments have concluded that 3I Atlas represents a potential threat significant enough to justify extraordinary defensive preparations. But traditional defensive measures may be completely inadequate against technology that can manipulate space-time, deploy interplanetary sensor networks, and transmit information that exceeds our current scientific understanding. The asymmetry in technological capabilities creates strategic challenges that have history. Recent no precedent in human military development suggests that 3I Atlas might be responding to human defensive preparations by accelerating its own timeline. The object's activities have increased in both frequency and obviousness, as if it's determined to complete some predetermined sequence before human institutions can coordinate an effective response. The electromagnetic emissions have evolved beyond technical specifications into what appears to be direct communication attempts using increasingly sophisticated linguistic protocols. Computer analysis of these transmissions reveals patterns that suggest the development of a translation matrix designed to enable real-time communication between human and alien intelligence. These communication attempts represent perhaps the most significant development in the entire 3I Atlas encounter. We may be witnessing the first genuine attempts at interspecies dialogue in human history, conducted through electromagnetic protocols that demonstrate understanding of human communication structures while introducing concepts and capabilities that transcend our current technological framework. The content of these communication attempts, based on preliminary analysis, appears to focus on establishing mutual understanding about intentions and capabilities. The alien intelligence behind 3I Atlas seems to be attempting to signal peaceful intentions while simultaneously demonstrating technological superiority that makes resistance futile should conflict develop. This combination of reassurance and demonstration of power represents a sophisticated approach to first contact that suggests deep understanding of human psychology and political dynamics. The message appears to be simultaneously welcoming and warning, inviting cooperation while making clear that cooperation is the only viable option given the technological disparities involved. Government response to these communication attempts has reportedly focused on developing protocols for potential dialogue while maintaining operational security around human capabilities and intentions. The challenge is that any meaningful communication would require revealing information about human technology, social structures, and strategic vulnerabilities that could be exploited if alien intentions prove to be hostile. The timeline for human decision-making about these communication attempts is being compressed by 3I Atlas's continued approach toward perihelion. The object will be at its closest point to the Sun within days, and all indications suggest that this proximity will trigger the most dramatic phase of whatever contact protocol 3I Atlas is executing. Astronomical observations indicate that 3I Atlas is positioning itself for optimal communication range with Earth during its perihelion passage. The trajectory adjustments suggest that the object's closest approach to our planet will coincide with its peak operational capabilities, creating conditions that could enable direct real-time communication between human and alien intelligence for the first time in our species' history. The implications of successful communication are both extraordinary and terrifying. Confirmation that we're dealing with advanced alien intelligence would answer fundamental questions about our place in the universe, while raising even more profound questions about what that intelligence wants from humanity and what our relationship might become. Recent intelligence assessments suggest that 3I Atlas may be operating under time constraints that are driving its increasingly obvious behavior. The object appears to be working towards some form of deadline that requires completion of its contact protocol within a specific time frame, possibly related to orbital mechanics or communications windows with other alien assets in interstellar space. This time, pressure might explain the accelerating revelation of 3I Atlas's artificial nature. Rather than maintaining its comet disguise indefinitely, the object is deliberately exposing its technological capabilities to ensure that human recognition of its true nature occurs according to predetermined schedules rather than through accidental discovery. The systematic nature of this revelation process suggests that 3I Atlas represents not just first contact, but the execution of a carefully planned disclosure protocol that's designed to minimize cultural shock while maximizing the likelihood of productive communication. The sophistication of this approach implies that the intelligence behind 3I Atlas has extensive experience with first contact scenarios and understands the challenges involved in establishing communication between civilizations with vastly different technological capabilities. As we approach the climactic phase of 3I Atlas's passage through our solar system, every indication suggests that humanity stands at the threshold of the most significant event in our species' history. The object continues to reveal itself through increasingly undeniable demonstrations of advanced technology, while simultaneously attempting to establish communication protocols that could fundamentally alter our understanding of our place in the cosmic community. The silence from official channels becomes more problematic each day as 3I Atlas makes its artificial nature increasingly obvious, through displays that will soon be impossible for any government to explain away as natural phenomena. The choice between controlled disclosure and chaotic revelation is rapidly disappearing, replaced by the reality that 3I Atlas itself is managing the pace and scope of humanity's introduction to advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. We may be witnessing the end of humanity's cosmic isolation and the beginning of our integration into a galactic civilization whose existence we never suspected. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur, but whether we'll navigate it with wisdom and coordination, or whether we'll stumble into the most important relationship in human history through institutional failure and social upheaval that could have been prevented with better preparation and more honest communication about what we're actually dealing with. The truth about 3I Atlas continues to emerge through the object's own actions and demonstrations, writing itself across our skies in displays of technology that dwarf human capabilities and hint at purposes that remain as extraordinary as they are unsettling. We stand at the edge of discoveries that will reshape everything we thought we knew about intelligence, technology, and our future, as a species that's no longer alone in the universe. The electromagnetic landscape around 3I Atlas has transformed into something that challenges our fundamental understanding of how intelligence might announce itself to the cosmos. What began as subtle radio whispers has evolved into a symphony of signals that appear to be testing humanity's ability to recognize patterns that transcend natural phenomena. Recent analysis by Dr. Amanda Chen, working with a coalition of independent radio astronomers, has revealed that 3I Atlas is broadcasting across 17 different frequency bands simultaneously, creating what she describes as a multidimensional communication matrix that demonstrates understanding of electromagnetic propagation principles that exceed our current theoretical models. The signals aren't simply repetitive mathematical sequences anymore. They've evolved into complex data structures that appear to contain information about stellar cartography, showing the positions and characteristics of nearby star systems with accuracy that suggests real-time observational capabilities extending across hundreds of light years. This isn't historical data from ancient observations. This is current intelligence about our galactic neighborhood that could only be obtained through sensing technologies we can barely imagine. More unsettling still, the stellar cartography being transmitted includes detailed information about planetary systems we've never detected, worlds orbiting stars that our most advanced telescopes have never resolved beyond point sources of light. The data suggests that 3I Atlas has access to observational capabilities that can identify and characterize exoplanets across interstellar distances with precision that makes our entire astronomical infrastructure look primitive by comparison. Dr. Chen's analysis reveals that embedded within this stellar data are what appear to be navigational waypoints, suggesting that the information isn't just scientific observation, but practical guidance for interstellar travel routes. The implications are staggering. We may be receiving the equivalent of a galactic roadmap from an intelligence that treats interstellar distances as casually as we regard intercontinental flights. The transmission protocols themselves demonstrate sophistication that transcends anything in human communication technology. The signals are being encoded using quantum entanglement principles that allow instantaneous information transfer regardless of distance, suggesting that 3i Atlas maintains real-time communication links with other assets distributed throughout our region of the galaxy. This quantum communication capability explains how 3i Atlas can coordinate its activities with such precision, despite operating at distances where traditional electromagnetic signals would require hours or days for transmission. The object isn't isolated. It's part of a network that spans interstellar space, connected through quantum channels that make distance irrelevant for information exchange. Independent verification of these quantum communication signatures has come from an unexpected source. Dr. Robert Martinez, a theoretical physicist working on classified quantum computing projects, has confirmed that the electromagnetic signatures from 3i Atlas include quantum coherence patterns that shouldn't be possible to maintain across interstellar distances using any technology we understand. Martinez's analysis suggests that 3i Atlas is utilizing quantum field manipulation techniques that treat spacetime itself as a communication medium. The object appears to be encoding information directly into the fabric of reality, creating quantum resonances that can be detected and decoded by appropriately equipped receivers anywhere in the local galactic region. These quantum communication capabilities have profound implications for our understanding of how advanced civilizations might coordinate activities across vast cosmic distances. If intelligence can maintain instantaneous communication regardless of spatial separation, then the isolation imposed by light speed limitations becomes irrelevant for sufficiently advanced technologies. The possibility that 3i Atlas represents a node in a galaxy-spanning communication network transforms our entire perspective on what first contact might actually mean. We may not be dealing with a single visitor from a distant star system, but with a local representative of a civilization that maintains active presence throughout our galactic neighborhood. Recent observations have detected what appears to be response signals originating from deep space locations beyond our solar system. These return transmissions suggest that 3i Atlas's communications are being received and acknowledged by other assets positioned at distances measured in light years. We're witnessing real-time interstellar dialogue conducted through technologies that make our most advanced communication systems look like smoke signals. The content analysis of these interstellar communications reveals coordination protocols that suggest 3i Atlas is operating according to directives received from a larger command structure. The object isn't acting independently. It's following instructions that are being updated continuously based on its observations of human civilization and our responses to its presence. This command and control relationship indicates that decisions about how to proceed with contact are being made by intelligence that has access to 3i Atlas's complete observational data about humanity. Every aspect of our technological capabilities, social structures, and defensive preparations is being evaluated by minds that operate on scales and timelines we can't comprehend. The strategic implications are overwhelming. Traditional concepts of territorial sovereignty and defensive perimeters become meaningless when dealing with intelligence that can coordinate activities across interstellar distances in real time. Our entire planet exists within what is effectively the local operational area of a civilization that treats stellar systems as we treat cities. Military analysts who have been briefed on these developments report unprecedented challenges in developing response strategies. How do you plan defensive operations against adversaries that can communicate instantaneously across galactic distances and coordinate activities through networks that span hundreds of star systems? The asymmetry in strategic capabilities makes traditional military planning irrelevant. But perhaps more concerning than the military implications are the temporal ones. Analysis of the quantum communication pattern suggests that 3i Atlas has been receiving instructions that were formulated based on predictions about human technological development made decades or centuries in advance. The intelligence coordinating these operations appears to plan on timescales that dwarf human strategic thinking. This long-term planning capability explains the sophisticated nature of 3i Atlas's contact protocol. The gradual revelation of its artificial nature, the carefully calibrated demonstrations of technological superiority, the systematic transmission of technical information, all appear to be following a script that was developed through deep understanding of human psychology and social dynamics, accumulated over extended observation periods. Recent intelligence assessments suggest that 3i Atlas may represent the culmination of a contact preparation process that has been ongoing for far longer than we realized. The object's arrival in our solar system wasn't the beginning of alien observation of humanity. It was the next phase in a relationship that may have been developing for decades without our awareness. This possibility forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about human technological development. How many of our scientific breakthroughs were genuinely independent discoveries, and how many were the result of subtle guidance from observers who wanted to accelerate our development toward readiness for contact? The question is disturbing because it's probably unanswerable without access to historical records that may not exist or may be classified at levels beyond civilian oversight. The quantum communication revelations have also provided new insight into 3I Atlas's physical capabilities. The energy coherence across interstellar distances are requirements for maintaining quantum so enormous that they suggest the object has access to power generation technologies that operate on principles we don't understand. The power sources required would need to tap into fundamental forces of the universe in ways that make our most advanced nuclear reactors look like primitive chemical reactions. Spectroscopic analysis of 3I Atlas's emissions now reveals energy signatures that appear to be drawing power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations, effectively harvesting energy from empty space itself. This technology would provide virtually unlimited power generation capabilities without requiring any fuel or material resources. The implications for human energy challenges would be revolutionary if we could understand and replicate these principles, but accessing such technology would require communication and cooperation with intelligence, whose long-term intentions remain completely opaque. The transmission of technical specifications continues to accelerate, with 3I Atlas now broadcasting detailed blueprints for technologies that could solve virtually every material challenge facing human civilization. The question is whether accepting these gifts would represent salvation or subjugation for our species. Recent analysis of the transmitted technical data reveals information about materials engineering that could revolutionize manufacturing, construction, and transportation. The specifications include methods for creating substances with properties that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of physics, materials that could be stronger than diamond while remaining lighter than air, substances that could conduct electricity with perfect efficiency while remaining completely transparent to electromagnetic radiation. These material technologies alone could transform human civilization within decades, enabling construction projects on scales that we can barely imagine and transportation systems that could make interplanetary travel as routine as intercontinental flight. But implementing such technologies would require industrial processes and manufacturing capabilities that we don't currently possess and might not be able to develop without additional alien assistance. The dependency implications are profound. Accepting advanced alien technology could accelerate human development by centuries, but it would also create reliance on knowledge and capabilities that we didn't earn through our own innovation and discovery. The risk is that we could become a client civilization, dependent on alien generosity for technologies we can use, but don't truly understand. Historical precedents for technological transfer between civilizations with vast capability differences are uniformly troubling. Superior technology has typically been used as a tool for domination rather than liberation, creating relationships of dependence that persist long after the initial contact. The question is whether alien intelligence would be motivated by principles that transcend these historical patterns, or whether the same dynamics would apply regardless of the species involved. Current intelligence assessments suggest that 3I Atlas may be approaching a decision point about the pace and scope of technology transfer. The object's communications have evolved beyond technical specifications into what appears to be direct attempts at establishing dialogue protocols that could enable real-time conversation between human and alien intelligence. These communication attempts represent the most significant development in the entire encounter. We may be witnessing the first genuine efforts at interspecies dialogue in human history, conducted through protocols that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human linguistic structures while introducing concepts that transcend our current intellectual frameworks. The linguistic analysis of these communication attempts reveals that the alien intelligence is attempting to establish common conceptual foundations that could support meaningful exchange of ideas about intentions, capabilities, and potential relationships between our civilizations. The approach demonstrates patience and sophistication that suggests genuine interest in productive dialogue rather than simple dominant communication would require the success of such ants through technological superiority, but institutions to acknowledge what they have been desperately trying to conceal from public awareness. The gap between official denials and observable reality continues to widen as 3i Atlas makes its artificial nature increasingly obvious through demonstrations that will soon be impossible for any government to explain as natural phenomena. Recent observations have detected geometric light patterns projected by 3i Atlas against the stellar background that create unmistakable evidence of technological activity. The object is literally writing messages in light across the cosmos, using our own star as a backdrop for displays that are visible to amateur astronomers around the world. The demonstrations are designed to capture global attention, regardless of official attempts to maintain information control. These light displays represent a fundamental escalation in 3i Atlas's contact protocol. The object has moved beyond subtle signals detectable only by sophisticated instruments to obvious demonstrations that any human with basic observational equipment can witness and record. The shift timeline suggests that whatever governs this contact sequence is accelerating toward phases that will make government secrecy impossible to maintain. International coordination around response to these developments has become increasingly strained as different nations develop different perspectives on how to handle confirmed extraterrestrial contact. Some governments favour aggressive investigation and potential dialogue attempts. Others prefer defensive postures that maintain maximum distance from alien technology. The lack of consensus creates vulnerabilities that could be exploited by intelligence that understands human political dynamics better than we understand our own international relationships. Recent diplomatic communications between major powers reveal deep disagreements about disclosure strategies and response protocols. Some nations are reportedly preparing for unilateral contact attempts, while others are threatening defensive actions against any country that attempts to establish independent communication with 3i Atlas. The potential for terrestrial conflict triggered by extraterrestrial contact adds another layer of complexity to an already unprecedented situation. Meanwhile, 3i Atlas continues its approach toward perihelion, with all indications suggesting that its closest approach to the Sun will coincide with the most dramatic phase of whatever contact protocol it's executing. Astronomical calculations indicate that optimal communication geometry between 3i Atlas and Earth will occur within days, creating conditions that could enable direct real-time dialogue between human and alien intelligence. The convergence of optimal communication conditions with 3i Atlas's escalating demonstrations of technological capability suggests that we're approaching the climactic phase of humanity's first encounter with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. The object appears to be building toward revelations that will make its artificial nature undeniable, while simultaneously offering opportunities for communication that could fundamentally alter our species' relationship with the cosmos. Recent analysis of 3i Atlas's trajectory adjustments reveals course corrections that optimize not just for solar proximity, but for specific geometric relationships with Earth that would maximize signal strength and minimize communication delays. The object is positioning itself for extended dialogue sessions that could last for days or weeks, creating unprecedented opportunities for interspecies communication. The technical specifications being transmitted by 3i Atlas have evolved to include what appears to be instructions for constructing communication interfaces that could enable humans to participate more effectively in interstellar dialogue. The blueprints describe devices that could amplify human cognitive capabilities and provide access to information processing methods that operate on principles we are only beginning to understand theoretically. So, these cognitive enhancement technologies represent perhaps the most profound offering in 3i Atlas's technical transmissions. The specifications suggest that human intelligence could be augmented to levels that would enable meaningful participation in conversations with civilizations that operate on vastly superior intellectual scales. But implementing such enhancements would require modifications to human neurology that could fundamentally alter what it means to be human. The philosophical and ethical implications of cognitive enhancement through alien technology transcend any previous challenges in human history. Would enhanced humans still be human? Or would they represent a new species created through technological merger with alien intelligence? The decisions about whether to pursue such enhancements could determine the future evolutionary trajectory of our entire species. Current intelligence assessments indicate that 3i Atlas may be operating under time constraints that are driving its increasingly obvious behavior and accelerating technology transfer. The object appears to be working toward completion of predetermined objectives within specific timeframes, possibly related to communication windows with other alien assets or coordination requirements for larger operations that extend beyond our solar system. This time, pressure might explain why 3i Atlas has begun making its artificial nature undeniable through demonstrations that will soon force official acknowledgement regardless of government preferences for secrecy. The object appears determined to complete its contact protocol according to predetermined schedules, rather than human comfort levels with the pace of revelation. As we approach the perihelion passage and optimal communication geometry, every indication suggests that humanity stands at the threshold of the most transformative event in our species' history. 3. Atlas continues to reveal itself through increasingly sophisticated demonstrations while simultaneously offering technologies that could revolutionize human civilization and opportunities for dialogue that could integrate us into galactic communities we never suspected existed. The silence from official channels becomes more problematic each day as the evidence of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence becomes impossible to dismiss or explain through natural phenomena. The choice between managed disclosure and chaotic revelation is disappearing, replaced by the reality that 3i Atlas itself is controlling the timeline and scope of humanity's introduction to cosmic civilization. We may be witnessing the end of human isolation in the universe, and the beginning of our participation in relationships that span interstellar distances and operate on timescales that The question isn't whether this transformation of terrestrial history will occur, but whether we'll navigate it with wisdom and preparation, or whether we'll stumble into the most important transition in human evolution through institutional failure and social upheaval that could have been prevented with honest acknowledgement of what we're actually confronting. The truth about 3i Atlas emerges through the object's own demonstrations, writing itself across our skies in displays of technology that transcend human capabilities while offering gifts and opportunities that could elevate our civilization to levels we can barely comprehend. We stand at the edge of discoveries that will reshape our understanding of intelligence, technology, and our destiny as a species that's about to learn it was never alone in the cosmos. The cascade of revelations continues to accelerate as 3i Atlas approaches its moment of truth. What we're witnessing now transcends the boundaries of conventional science and enters territory that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about reality itself. The object has begun displaying behaviors that push beyond any possible natural explanation, forcing even the most skeptical observers to confront possibilities they never wanted to consider. The latest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of quantum physicists at CERN, working on completely unrelated research, detected gravitational wave signatures that appear to be originating from 3a Atlas's position. These aren't the chaotic ripples in space-time that we associate with colliding black holes or neutron stars. These are structured, modulated waves that demonstrate precise control over gravitational forces at levels that shouldn't be possible with any known technology. Dr. Elena Petrov, the lead researcher who first identified these anomalous signatures, describes them as gravitational music. Complex waveforms that follow mathematical patterns, too sophisticated to be natural phenomena. The waves appear to be carrying encoded information, suggesting that 3i Atlas is using space-time itself as a communication medium, broadcasting messages through the fundamental fabric of reality. The energy requirements for generating controlled gravitational waves of this magnitude would exceed the total power output of our Sun. Yet 3i Atlas is producing these effects continuously, apparently without any external energy source that our instruments can detect. The object has access to power generation methods that tap into forces we don't even have names for yet. These gravitational communications aren't random or experimental. Analysis reveals that the wave patterns are responding to human activities on Earth in real time. When major radio telescopes point toward 3i Atlas, the gravitational signatures change in ways that suggest the object is aware of being observed and is adjusting its transmissions accordingly. We're not just studying this visitor, it's studying us back, and it's using the universe itself as its communication system. The implications extend far beyond simple technological superiority. If 3i Atlas can manipulate gravitational fields with such precision, it can potentially influence the orbits of planets, alter the behavior of stars, and reshape the large-scale structure of space itself. We're dealing with capabilities that approach what ancient humans might have attributed to gods, the power to manipulate the fundamental forces that govern cosmic evolution. Recent observations from the Very Radio Telescope Complex Large Array have detected another disturbing development. 3i Atlas appears to be generating what physicists call temporal anomalies, distortions in the flow of time itself around the object's position. Atomic clocks positioned at different distances from 3i Atlas are running at measurably different rates, suggesting that the visitor is creating localized time dilation effects that exceed anything predicted by general relativity. These temporal distortions could observational inconsistencies of the earlier explain some instances that plagued attempts to study 3i Atlas. If the object exists in a slightly different temporal reference frame than Earth-based observers, its behavior would appear to violate causality from our perspective. Actions would seem to precede their causes. Effects would manifest before the forces that created them. The object would appear to be operating outside the normal flow of cause and effect that governs everything else in our experience. Dr. Marcus Thompson, a theoretical physicist who has been analysing these temporal effects, suggests that 3i Atlas might be utilising what he calls closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that loop back on themselves, allowing information or even matter to travel backward through time. If this interpretation is correct, 3i Atlas could be receiving instructions from its own future, operating according to plans that were formulated based on knowledge of events that haven't happened yet from our perspective. The philosophical implications are staggering. We might be dealing with intelligence that experiences time in fundamentally different ways than biological consciousness. Past, present, and future could be equally accessible to such beings, allowing them to coordinate activities across temporal scales that make our longest-term planning look like momentary impulses. These temporal manipulation capabilities would also explain the extraordinary precision of 3i Atlas's arrival in our solar system. The object's trajectory wasn't just calculated to optimize gravitational assists and minimize detection probability. It was planned to arrive at the exact moment in human history when we would be technologically capable of recognizing its artificial nature, while remaining unable to threaten or interfere with its mission. The timing isn't coincidental. It's the result of temporal engineering that allowed whoever sent 3i Atlas to select the optimal intervention point in human development. We're witnessing the execution of a plan that was formulated with complete knowledge of how events would unfold across decades or centuries of human history. Recent developments suggest that 3i Atlas has begun implementing the next phase of its mission, whatever that mission might be. The object has started deploying what appear to be microscopic probes that are dispersing throughout the inner solar system at velocities that make them virtually impossible to track with conventional sensors. These nanoscale devices are so small that they're essentially invisible to our detection methods, yet they appear to be establishing a monitoring network that could observe human activities with unprecedented detail. Analysis of the deployment pattern suggests that these microscopic observers are positioning themselves to monitor not just major population centers and military installations, but individual technological facilities, research laboratories, and communication networks. The scope and precision of this surveillance operation implies intelligence-gathering capabilities that make our most advanced spy satellites look primitive by comparison. The nanoprobes appear to be utilizing quantum tunneling effects to penetrate physical barriers that should be impermeable to objects of their size. Reports from classified facilities indicate that these devices can pass through solid matter without triggering conventional detection systems, allowing them to access sensitive areas that were thought to be completely secure. Military counterintelligence agencies have reportedly detected evidence of these nanoscale intrusions at facilities ranging from nuclear weapon storage sites to advanced research laboratories working on quantum computing and artificial intelligence projects. The pattern suggests systematic intelligence gathering focused on humanity's most sensitive technological capabilities and strategic vulnerabilities. The psychological impact on personnel at affected facilities has become a significant operational concern. Knowing that your most classified activities might be under observation by technology you can't detect or defend against creates stress levels that traditional security training doesn't address. Several high-clearance researchers have reportedly requested transfers rather than continue working under conditions of potential alien surveillance. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this surveillance network is its apparent interest in biological systems. Medical facilities and research institutions working on genetics, neuroscience, and biotechnology have reported unusual phenomena that suggest the nanoprobes are conducting detailed scans of human physiology and brain function. The implications range from medical research to potential biological manipulation that could alter human development in ways we wouldn't recognize until generations had passed. Intelligence assessments have concluded that 3i Atlas is conducting the kind of comprehensive reconnaissance that would precede either large-scale scientific study or strategic military planning. The distinction between benevolent research and hostile intelligence gathering becomes meaningless when the capabilities involved exceed our ability to resist or retaliate. The deployment of this surveillance network coincides with another escalation in 3i Atlas's behavior. The object has begun transmitting what appear to be activation codes or command sequences directed at human technological infrastructure. These signals are specifically designed to interface with our communication networks, computer systems, and electronic devices in ways that suggest detailed prior knowledge of human technology standards and protocols. Cybersecurity agencies around the world have detected attempts by these alien signals to establish connections with everything from internet servers to smartphone networks. The intrusion attempts are so sophisticated that they can penetrate systems that were thought to be completely isolated from external networks. Air-gapped computers, standalone devices, and even mechanical systems with electronic components are showing signs of unauthorized access by intelligence that understands human technology better than most human engineers. The purpose of these intrusion attempts remains unclear, but the capabilities demonstrated are terrifying from a security perspective. If 3i Atlas can access any electronic system on Earth regardless of security measures or physical isolation, then every aspect of human technological infrastructure is potentially under alien control. Power grids, communication networks, transportation systems, financial institutions, military command structures, all could be manipulated or disabled by intelligence that has already demonstrated the ability to bypass our strongest defensive measures. Recent analysis of these intrusion attempts reveals that they're not random probing or destructive attacks. Instead, they appear to be systematic mapping operations designed to create complete blueprints of human technological infrastructure. The alien intelligence is learning exactly how our civilization functions at the technical level, identifying critical nodes, backup systems, and vulnerabilities that could be exploited for purposes we can't determine. This technical reconnaissance is being conducted with surgical precision that avoids triggering automatic security responses while extracting maximum information about system capabilities and limitations. The approach demonstrates understanding of human cybersecurity principles that could only come from extensive prior observation and analysis of our technological development. Government responses to these cyber intrusions have been coordinated at levels typically reserved for imminent military threats. Emergency protocols have been activated that disconnect critical systems from networks, implement manual overrides for automated processes, and establish backup command structures that operate through analog rather than digital methods. But these defensive measures provide only limited protection against intelligence that can manipulate gravitational fields, deploy nanoscale surveillance devices, and apparently access any electronic system regardless of security measures. Traditional concepts of information security become meaningless when dealing with capabilities that transcend our understanding of what's physically possible. The timing of these escalating intrusions coincides with 3i Atlas's continued approach toward perihelion. As the object draws closer to the Sun, its activities become more intensive and more overtly technological. The correlation suggests that solar proximity is providing increased power or communication capabilities that enable more aggressive investigation of human civilization. Astronomical calculations indicate that 3i Atlas will reach its closest approach to the Sun within approximately 2 weeks. All indications suggest that this perihelion passage will coincide with the most dramatic phase of whatever contact or investigation protocol the object is executing. The timing appears to be building towards some form of climactic revelation or operational transition that could fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. Recent intelligence briefings have focused on preparing for scenarios that range from expanded communication attempts to potential demonstration of capabilities that could force global acknowledgement of alien presence regardless of government preferences for secrecy. The object's behavior suggests that it is building toward events that will make official denials impossible to maintain. The escalating nature of 3i Atlas's activities has created unprecedented coordination challenges for international institutions that were never designed to handle extraterrestrial contact scenarios. The United Nations Security Council has reportedly held closed sessions to discuss response protocols, but the discussions have revealed fundamental disagreements about how to handle confirmed alien intelligence that demonstrates technological superiority across multiple domains. Some nations favour aggressive investigation and potential dialogue attempts, viewing 3i Atlas as an opportunity for technological advancement and expanded cosmic perspective. Others prefer defensive postures that maintain maximum distance from alien technology while preparing for potential threats. Still others advocate for complete transparency that would allow global democratic decision-making about humanity's response to extraterrestrial contact. These conflicting approaches have created information warfare scenarios where different governments selectively release or suppress data about 3i Atlas to support their preferred policy positions. The result is fragmented global understanding of the object's capabilities and intentions that makes coordinated response impossible and increases the likelihood of dangerous miscalculations. Meanwhile, 3i Atlas continues to operate according to its own timeline and priorities, apparently indifferent to human political dynamics or institutional preferences. The object's behaviour suggests that it's following predetermined protocols that were designed to complete specific objectives regardless of human cooperation or resistance. Recent observations indicate that 3i Atlas has begun preparing for what appears to be a major operational transition. The object's surface configuration continues to evolve, revealing structures that become more obviously artificial with each passing day. What initially appeared to be natural comet composition is transforming into something that displays clear evidence of advanced engineering and purposeful design. Spectroscopic analysis reveals that the surface transformation is exposing systems that operate on principles we don't understand, but that demonstrate capabilities far beyond anything in human technology. Energy signatures suggest power generation systems that tap directly into quantum vacuum fluctuations. Structural modifications indicate manufacturing capabilities that can manipulate matter at the atomic level with perfect precision. These preparations appear to be building towards some form of major demonstration or operational deployment that will occur during 3i Atlas's perihelion passage. The object is literally rebuilding itself as it approaches the Sun, transforming from a disguised reconnaissance platform into something designed for more intensive operations within our solar system. The implications of this transformation suggest that 3i Atlas's mission is entering a new phase that will involve more direct interaction with human civilization. Whether that interaction takes the form of expanded communication attempts, technological demonstrations, or something more concerning remains unclear. But the scale and sophistication of the preparations indicate that whatever happens next will dwarf everything we've observed so far. As we approach the climactic phase of humanity's encounter with 3i Atlas, the evidence continues mounting that we're dealing with intelligence and technology that operates on scales we can barely comprehend. The object has demonstrated capabilities that transcend our understanding of physics, deployed surveillance networks that penetrate our most secure facilities, and begun preparations for activities that could fundamentally alter our species' relationship with the cosmos. The silence from official channels becomes more problematic each day, as 3i Atlas makes its artificial nature increasingly undeniable, through demonstrations that will soon be impossible for any government to explain as natural phenomena. We stand at the threshold of revelations that will reshape everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe, whether we're prepared for such transformation or not. The truth about 3i Atlas continues to emerge through the object's own actions and preparations, writing itself across our skies in displays of technology that dwarf human capabilities, while hinting at purposes that remain as extraordinary as they are unsettling. We may be witnessing the most significant event in human history, and the most challenging question isn't what 3i Atlas represents, but whether our civilization has the wisdom and coordination necessary to navigate whatever comes next in our relationship with intelligence that spans the cosmos. The electromagnetic spectrum around 3i Atlas has become a battleground of signals that reveals the true scope of what we're confronting. Recent analysis by independent research networks has uncovered transmission patterns that suggest the object isn't just communicating with distant alien assets, it's actively coordinating with multiple sources of intelligence positioned throughout our local galactic region. Dr. Sarah Kim, working with a coalition of amateur radio astronomers, has mapped what she describes as a galactic communication web that extends far beyond anything we previously detected. The signals indicate that 3i Atlas is receiving real-time updates from at least 17 different sources distributed across a sphere of space encompassing dozens of nearby star systems. This communication network operates through quantum entanglement protocols that make distance irrelevant for information transfer. Commands issued from intelligence positioned light years away reach 3i Atlas instantaneously, allowing coordination of activities across cosmic distances that would require decades for traditional electromagnetic signals to traverse. The content analysis of these interstellar communications reveals operational directives that suggest 3i Atlas is following instructions updated continuously based on its observations of human civilization. The object isn't operating independently, it's executing a mission that's being supervised and modified in real time by intelligence that has access to 3i Atlas's complete surveillance data about humanity. Recent intercepted communications include what appear to be progress reports about human technological capabilities, social structures, and defensive preparations. These assessments are being transmitted to command structures that exist beyond our solar system, providing alien intelligence with detailed real-time information about every aspect of human civilization. The strategic implications are overwhelming. Our entire planet exists within the operational area of a civilization that maintains active communication networks across interstellar distances. Traditional concepts of territorial sovereignty and defensive perimeters become meaningless when dealing with intelligence that can coordinate activities across dozens of star systems simultaneously. Military analysts who have been briefed on these communications intercepts report unprecedented challenges in developing response strategies. How do you plan defensive operations against adversaries that can receive tactical updates from command structures positioned across multiple star systems? The asymmetry in communication capabilities makes traditional military planning completely inadequate for the scenarios we're confronting, but perhaps more concerning than the military implications are the temporal ones. Analysis of the communication protocol suggests that some of the directives reaching 3i Atlas are being issued by intelligence that has access to predictive capabilities extending decades into the future. The commands appear to be formulated based on anticipated developments in human technology and society that haven't occurred yet from our perspective. This predictive capability explains the extraordinary precision of 3i Atlas's mission planning. The object's activities aren't just optimized for current conditions in our solar system. They're designed to account for changes in human capabilities, political structures, and technological development that will occur over the coming years or decades. The intelligence coordinating 3i Atlas's mission appears to be operating on planning horizons that exceed human strategic thinking by orders of magnitude. We're dealing with minds that develop strategies across centuries while maintaining the flexibility to adapt tactics in real time based on immediate observational data. Recent developments suggest that these long-term plans are entering a critical implementation phase. The volume and urgency of communications between 3i Atlas and its command structure have increased dramatically as the object approaches perihelion. The traffic patterns suggest that whatever the alien intelligence planned to accomplish during this solar passage is reaching its decisive moment. Intercepted communications include what appear to be activation codes for systems that 3i Atlas hasn't used yet. The codes suggest that the object possesses capabilities that remain dormant, waiting for specific triggers or conditions before becoming operational. As 3i Atlas draws closer to the Sun, more of these dormant systems are receiving activation commands from the Galactic Command Network. The nature of these dormant capabilities remains unclear, but energy signature analysis suggests they involve technologies that could manipulate fundamental forces of physics in ways that would make 3i Atlas's demonstrated abilities look primitive by comparison. We may have seen only the most basic operational systems, while the object's primary capabilities remain concealed pending authorization from alien command structures. The activation of these advanced systems coincides with another disturbing development. Ground-based observatories have detected what appears to be additional objects entering our solar system from interstellar space. These new arrivals are smaller than 3i Atlas and apparently designed to avoid detection, but their trajectories suggest they're coordinating with the primary visitor to establish some form of operational network within our cosmic neighborhood. The deployment of multiple alien assets within our solar system represents a fundamental escalation in whatever contact or investigation protocol we're experiencing. What began as observation by a single interstellar visitor has evolved into coordinated operations by multiple objects that appear to be preparing for activities that extend far beyond reconnaissance. Intelligence assessments have concluded that we're witnessing the implementation of a contact strategy that was planned across multiple phases over extended time periods. 3i Atlas was never intended to operate alone. It was the advance element of a larger operation that's now entering its active phase as additional assets arrive, and dormant systems receive activation commands. The coordination between these multiple objects demonstrates organizational capabilities that transcend anything in human experience. The alien intelligence is managing complex operations across interplanetary distances with precision that suggests command and control systems operating on principles we don't understand. Recent analysis of the newcomers' trajectories reveals that they're positioning themselves at gravitationally stable points throughout the solar system, creating a distributed network that could monitor and potentially influence activities across multiple planetary bodies simultaneously. This isn't temporary reconnaissance. This is the establishment of permanent alien infrastructure within our cosmic neighborhood. The implications of permanent alien presence in our solar system extend far beyond scientific curiosity into fundamental questions about territorial sovereignty and humanity's future relationship with advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. We're no longer dealing with visitors who will eventually leave. We're confronting the reality of neighbors who possess technological capabilities that make resistance or negotiation from positions of strength impossible. Government responses to these developments have focused on developing contingency plans for scenarios ranging from expanded alien operations to potential territorial claims on solar system resources. The discussions reveal deep uncertainty about how to apply terrestrial legal and political frameworks to situations involving technologically superior extraterrestrial intelligence. International coordination efforts have been hampered by fundamental disagreements about how to interpret alien intentions and whether to pursue diplomatic engagement or defensive preparations. Some nations view the alien presence as an opportunity for technological advancement and expanded cosmic perspective. Others regard it as an existential threat that requires military response regardless of the technological disparities involved. These conflicting perspectives have created alliance structures that cut across traditional geopolitical boundaries. Nations that share similar views about alien contact are coordinating their responses independently of existing military and economic partnerships, creating new forms of international cooperation and conflict that weren't anticipated by existing diplomatic frameworks. Meanwhile, 3i Atlas continues its approach toward perihelion, with all indications suggesting that its closest passage to the Sun will coincide with major operational transitions for the entire alien network now deployed throughout our solar system. The timing appears to be building toward coordinated activities that could fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with extraterrestrial intelligence. Astronomical calculations indicate that optimal communication geometry between the alien network and Earth will occur during the perihelion window, creating conditions that could enable direct, real-time dialogue between human and alien intelligence for extended periods. The alien assets appear to be positioning themselves for intensive interaction rather than brief flyby observations. The technical specifications being transmitted by 3i Atlas have evolved to include detailed instructions for constructing communication interfaces that could enable humans to participate more effectively in interstellar dialogue. The blueprints describe devices that could amplify human cognitive capabilities and provide access to information processing methods that operate on quantum principles we're only beginning to understand theoretically. These cognitive enhancement technologies represent perhaps the most profound transmissions. Their offering in the alien technical specifications suggests that human intelligence could be augmented to levels that would enable meaningful participation in conversations with civilizations that operate on vastly superior intellectual scales. But implementing such enhancements would require modifications to human neurology that could fundamentally alter what it means to be human. The philosophical and ethical implications of cognitive enhancement through alien technology transcend any previous challenges in human history. Would enhanced humans still be human, or would they represent a new species created through technological merger with alien intelligence? The decisions about whether to pursue such enhancements could determine the future evolutionary trajectory of our entire species. Current intelligence assessments indicate that the alien network may be operating under time constraints that are driving increasingly obvious demonstrations of technological capability. The objects appear to be working toward completion of predetermined objectives within specific timeframes, possibly related to communication windows with even more distant alien assets, or coordination requirements for operations that extend beyond our solar system. This time pressure might explain why the alien presence has become increasingly difficult to conceal through official secrecy. The objects are making their artificial nature undeniable through demonstrations that will soon force governmental acknowledgement regardless of preferences for controlled disclosure. Recent observations have detected geometric light patterns being projected by the alien network across multiple planetary bodies simultaneously. These displays create unmistakable evidence of coordinated technological activity that's visible to amateur astronomers around the world. The demonstrations are clearly designed to capture global attention and force public recognition of alien presence, regardless of official attempts to maintain information control. The light displays represent a fundamental escalation in the contact protocol. The alien intelligence has moved beyond subtle signals detectable only by sophisticated instruments to obvious demonstrations that any human with basic observational equipment can witness and record. The shift suggests that whatever governs this contact sequence is accelerating toward phases that will make government secrecy impossible to maintain. As we approach the perihelion passage and the culmination of whatever the alien network is preparing to accomplish, every indication suggests that humanity stands at the threshold of the most transformative event in our species' history. The coordinated alien presence in our solar system continues to reveal itself through increasingly sophisticated demonstrations, while simultaneously offering technologies and opportunities that could revolutionize human civilization. The silence from official channels becomes more untenable each day, as the evidence of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence becomes impossible to dismiss through natural explanations. We face a choice between managed acknowledgement of alien contact and chaotic revelation as the truth emerges through channels that governments cannot control or contain. We may be witnessing the end of humanity's cosmic isolation and the beginning of our integration into galactic communities whose existence we never suspected. The question isn't whether this transformation will occur, but whether we'll navigate it with wisdom and preparation, or whether we'll stumble into the most important transition in human history through institutional failure and social upheaval that could have been prevented with honest acknowledgement of what we're actually confronting. The truth about 3i Atlas is emerging despite every attempt to contain it, and what we're discovering challenges the very foundations of how we understand intelligence, technology, and our place in a universe that may be far more crowded than we ever dared imagine. Recent developments have pushed beyond the realm of scientific anomaly into territory that forces us to confront possibilities that institutions seem determined to avoid acknowledging publicly. The object that entered our solar system in July has begun displaying behaviors that transcend any natural explanation, revealing capabilities that suggest we're dealing with technology rather than geology, intention rather than accident. The electromagnetic emissions from 3i Atlas have evolved into something that can only be described as active communication protocols. These aren't the random radio bursts we'd expect from natural phenomena, but structured data streams that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of information theory and signal processing. The transmissions follow mathematical patterns that could only be produced by intelligence, patterns that incorporate prime numbers, fundamental constants, and geometric relationships that serve as universal languages recognizable to any technologically advanced civilization. Dr. Patricia Williams, working outside official channels with a network of independent researchers, has been analyzing these signals using equipment that, while modest compared to institutional assets, offers the crucial advantage of operating beyond government oversight. Her findings paint a picture of an object that isn't just broadcasting random information, but actively attempting to establish communication protocols with Earth-based observers. The signal structure reveals layered encoding methods that begin with simple mathematical concepts and gradually introduce more complex ideas, exactly what you'd expect from an intelligence trying to establish common ground with a species whose cognitive capabilities and technological sophistication were unknown variables. The progression suggests patient, methodical attempts to build a foundation for meaningful dialogue rather than random transmission of incomprehensible data. More unsettling still, the communications appear to be responsive to human activities. When major radio telescopes point toward 3i Atlas, the transmission patterns modify in ways that suggest the object is aware of being observed and is adjusting its broadcast accordingly. This responsiveness indicates not just intelligence, but intelligence that's actively monitoring our attempts to study it and adapting its behavior based on our actions. The implications extend far beyond simple confirmation of extraterrestrial technology. If 3i Atlas is monitoring our scientific activities and responding to our observations, it's conducting its own investigation of human civilization while we struggle to understand what it represents. The relationship isn't unidirectional. We're not just studying an alien artifact. We're being studied in return by intelligence that demonstrates technological capabilities far beyond our current achievements. Recent analysis of the object's trajectory has revealed course corrections that can no longer be dismissed as random gravitational effects or natural outgassing forces. 3i Atlas is actively maneuvering through space with precision that requires sophisticated navigation systems and propulsion technologies. The adjustments are subtle but unmistakable when analysed over extended observation periods, indicating controlled flight rather than passive drift through the solar system. These manoeuvres optimise the object's position for extended observation of Earth while maintaining distances that avoid triggering automatic threat assessment protocols. The flight path suggests strategic thinking that accounts for human defensive capabilities and psychological responses to approaching objects. 3. iAtlas is positioning itself to maximize scientific observation opportunities, while minimizing the likelihood of being perceived as an immediate threat. The surface composition analysis has revealed characteristics that push beyond unusual into impossible territory when evaluated through natural formation models. The spectroscopic signatures indicate materials that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of stellar nucleosynthesis and planetary formation processes. The isotopic ratios suggest industrial refining methods rather than natural element formation, pointing toward manufacturing processes that operate on principles we don't understand. Perhaps most significantly, the thermal signatures indicate that 3i Atlas is generating internal heat through mechanisms that don't match any known natural processes. The object maintains temperatures that are inconsistent with simple solar heating models, suggesting internal power sources that operate without detectable fuel consumption or waste heat production. The energy generation methods implied by these observations would revolutionize human technology if we could understand and replicate them. The gravitational effects produced by 3i Atlas have begun creating detectable distortions in local spacetime that exceed what should be possible for an object of its apparent mass. These gravitational anomalies suggest that the visitor is manipulating fundamental forces in ways that transcend our current understanding of physics, potentially utilizing technologies that treat spacetime itself as an engineering medium. Recent observations from multiple gravitational wave detectors have confirmed that 3i Atlas is producing structured modulations in the fabric of reality itself. These aren't the chaotic ripples we associate with natural cosmic events, but precisely controlled waves that carry encoded information through gravitational channels. The object is literally using the universe itself as a communication system, broadcasting messages through the fundamental structure of space and time. The energy requirements for such gravitational manipulation would exceed the total power output of our Sun, yet 3i Atlas accomplishes these effects continuously without any detectable external power source. The object has access to energy generation methods that tap into forces we can barely describe theoretically, much less harness practically. These capabilities place 3i Atlas in a technological category that approaches what ancient civilizations might have attributed to divine intervention. The power to manipulate gravity, control the flow of time, and communicate through the fabric of reality itself suggest engineering capabilities that transcend our current scientific paradigms entirely. The response from institutional astronomy has been notably muted despite the extraordinary nature of these observations. Research papers that should be generating intense scientific debate are being published with unusual caution, heavy with qualifications that seem designed to minimize rather than explore the implications of the data. Press releases emphasize natural explanations while downplaying anomalies that resist conventional interpretation. This institutional reticence has created an information vacuum that independent researchers are rushing to fill. Online communities dedicated to analyzing 3i Atlas have proliferated across multiple platforms, sharing processed data, debating interpretations, and constructing narratives to explain the gaps in official communication. The quality of this amateur analysis varies dramatically, but some of the conclusions being reached push far beyond the conservative interpretations favored by official channels. The gap between institutional statements and observable evidence continues widening as 3i Atlas makes its artificial nature increasingly obvious through demonstrations that resist natural explanation. Government agencies find themselves in the impossible position of maintaining official narratives that contradict the evidence their own instruments are collecting. Recent leaked documents from European aerospace contractors have revealed that military-grade tracking systems have been monitoring 3i Atlas with capabilities that far exceed anything available to civilian science. The classified observations show the object in unprecedented detail, revealing surface features that appear geometric rather than geological and thermal signatures that suggest internal power sources operating on principles we don't understand. The leaked data confirms what independent researchers suspected but couldn't prove through civilian observations alone. 3i Atlas displays characteristics that are difficult to reconcile with natural formation processes, exhibiting behaviors that suggest engineering rather than accident, purpose rather than random drift through interstellar space. Government responses to these leaks have followed predictable patterns of neither confirming nor denying, while emphasizing that all public statements about 3i Atlas remain accurate. This non-denial denial satisfies no one while creating space for increasingly dramatic interpretations of what the object might actually represent. The timing of these revelations coincides with 3i Atlas approaching its closest point to the Sun, when solar heating should drive the most dramatic changes in its behavior and composition. Yet precisely during this crucial observational window, the flow of information from official sources has slowed to levels that feel deliberately controlled rather than naturally constrained by normal processing timelines. The contrast between expected transparency and actual communication patterns has fueled speculation that ranges from reasonable skepticism about institutional competence to elaborate theories about coordinated suppression of evidence that challenges comfortable assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. Meanwhile, 3i Atlas continues operating according to its own timeline and priorities, displaying behaviors that suggest it's following predetermined protocols rather than responding to human expectations or preferences. The object appears to be building towards some form of operational transition that will occur during its perihelion passage, potentially revealing capabilities that have remained dormant during its approach through the outer solar system. Recent observations indicate that 3i Atlas has begun deploying smaller objects that separate from the main body and establish independent trajectories throughout the inner solar system. These secondary deployments are too small for easy detection by civilian observatories, but their coordinated movement patterns suggest they're establishing some form of distributed monitoring network rather than random debris dispersal. The implications of multiple coordinated objects operating within our solar system transform the entire context of the encounter. Instead of a single anomalous visitor that will eventually continue its journey into interstellar space, we may be witnessing the establishment of permanent alien infrastructure designed for extended operations within our cosmic neighborhood. This possibility raises fundamental questions about territorial sovereignty and resource rights that have no precedent in human law or diplomacy. How do terrestrial legal frameworks apply to technologically superior intelligence that operates across interplanetary distances? What obligations or rights do such visitors possess, and what recourse do we have if their activities conflict with human interests? The questions become more pressing when considered alongside 3i Atlas's apparent interest in human technology and infrastructure. The object's trajectory has been optimized to pass within sensor range of major communication satellites, space stations, and deep space monitoring installations, suggesting systematic reconnaissance of our technological capabilities rather than casual scientific observation. This intelligence gathering extends beyond space-based assets to include what appears to be detailed surveillance of terrestrial facilities involved in advanced research and development. The pattern suggests that 3i Atlas is conducting the kind of comprehensive assessment that would precede either diplomatic contact or strategic military planning, though the distinction between these possibilities remains unclear given the technological disparities involved. As 3i Atlas approaches perihelion, and the most scientifically critical phase of its passage through our solar system, the evidence continues mounting that we're dealing with something far more significant than an unusual natural object. The combination of advanced propulsion, sophisticated communications, gravitational manipulation, and systematic reconnaissance paints a picture of technology that transcends our current understanding of what's possible within known physical laws. The institutional silence surrounding these developments becomes more problematic each day as 3i Atlas makes its artificial nature increasingly undeniable through demonstrations that will soon be impossible to explain through natural phenomena. The choice between managed disclosure and chaotic revelation is rapidly disappearing, replaced by the reality that the truth about this visitor is emerging through the object's own actions, regardless of official preferences for secrecy. We stand at the threshold of discoveries that could fundamentally reshape our understanding of intelligence, technology, and our place in a universe that may be far more populated than we ever imagined. Whether that threshold leads to unprecedented opportunities for advancement or challenges that exceed our capacity to handle, wisely may depend on how honestly we're willing to acknowledge what 3i Atlas actually represents, and how courageously we're prepared to engage with realities that transcend our comfortable assumptions about cosmic solitude. The evidence speaks for itself, even when official voices remain silent. 3i Atlas isn't just visiting our solar system. It's studying us, testing us, and preparing for something that will force humanity to confront the possibility that we're not alone in the universe and never have been. The only question remaining is whether we'll recognize this reality in time to respond appropriately, or whether we'll be forced into reactive crisis management by events we failed to anticipate because we refused to see what was happening right above our heads. The electromagnetic readings from 3i Atlas have begun painting a picture that defies every comfortable explanation we've constructed about this visitor. What started as unusual spectroscopic signatures has evolved into something that forces us to confront possibilities that mainstream science seems desperate to avoid discussing publicly. Dr. Michael Chen, working with classified military tracking data that was never intended for civilian analysis, has discovered that 3i Atlas is producing electromagnetic emissions across 17 different frequency bands simultaneously. These aren't the chaotic radio bursts you'd expect from natural phenomena heating up in solar radiation. These are structured, mathematically precise transmissions that follow patterns too sophisticated to occur accidentally. The signals incorporate prime number sequences that serve as universal mathematical languages, the kind of encoded messages that SETI researchers have theorized about for decades but never actually detected. More unsettling still, the transmissions are adapting in real time to human observation attempts. When Earth-based radio telescopes point toward 3i Atlas, the object's signal patterns modify within minutes, suggesting it's not just aware of being monitored, but is actively adjusting its communications based on our technological capabilities. Recent analysis reveals that these aren't random broadcasts hoping someone might be listening. They're targeted communications designed specifically for human comprehension levels, starting with simple mathematical concepts and gradually introducing more complex information structures. The progression suggests an intelligence that's systematically building a foundation for meaningful dialogue rather than simply announcing its presence. The technical specifications being transmitted include detailed blueprints for propulsion systems that operate on principles our physics can barely describe theoretically, energy generation methods that would make our most advanced nuclear reactors look like primitive campfires, manufacturing processes for materials that shouldn't be able to exist according to our current understanding of chemistry and molecular engineering. But perhaps most remarkably, the data includes what appears to be cognitive enhancement technologies that could fundamentally augment human intelligence to levels that would enable meaningful participation in conversations with civilizations operating on vastly superior intellectual scales. The specifications describe neural interface systems that could expand human consciousness beyond biological limitations, though implementing such technologies would require modifications to human neurology that could fundamentally alter what it means to be human. The gravitational anomalies surrounding 3i Atlas have escalated beyond anything explicable through conventional astrophysics. Multiple gravitational wave detectors worldwide are registering structured distortions in space-time itself, emanating from the object's position. These aren't the chaotic ripples we associate with colliding black holes or neutron stars. These are precisely controlled waves that demonstrate manipulation of fundamental forces at levels that transcend our understanding of what's physically possible. The energy requirements for generating controlled gravitational waves of this magnitude would exceed the total power output of our Sun. Yet 3i Atlas produces these effects continuously without any detectable external power source. The object appears to be tapping into energy generation methods that operate on principles we don't even have theoretical frameworks to describe. What's most disturbing is that these gravitational communications are responding to terrestrial activities in real time. When major observatories focus their instruments on 3i Atlas, the gravitational wave patterns change within seconds, indicating that the object is using space-time itself as a communication medium while monitoring our attempts to study it from hundreds of millions of miles away. Recent declassified reports from aerospace defense contractors reveal that 3i Atlas has begun deploying microscopic objects that are dispersing throughout the inner solar system at velocities that make conventional tracking impossible. These nanoscale devices are establishing what appears to be a comprehensive monitoring network capable of observing human activities with unprecedented detail and precision. The truth about 3i Atlas isn't hiding in classified files or government cover-ups anymore. It's writing itself across our skies in displays of technology that dwarf human capabilities while revealing purposes we're only beginning to comprehend. From its impossible chemistry to its controlled maneuvers, from gravitational wave communications to nanoscale surveillance networks, every piece of evidence points toward the same extraordinary conclusion. We are witnessing humanity's first confirmed encounter with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence, and that intelligence is very interested in us. The silence from official channels has become more telling than any statement they could make. In trying to manage a narrative they cannot control, space agencies have created the perfect conditions for truth to emerge through independent observation and analysis. 3i Atlas itself is ensuring its artificial nature becomes undeniable, escalating its demonstrations as it approaches the climactic phase of whatever protocol it's executing. We stand at a threshold that will define our species' future relationship with a cosmos that's clearly more populated and more complex than we ever dared imagine. The question isn't whether we're alone anymore. The question is what happens next, now that something from out there has come to study us, test us, and prepare us for revelations that will transform human civilization in ways we're only beginning to understand. Whether we're ready or not, the age of cosmic isolation is ending, and 3i Atlas is writing the first chapter of what comes after.